I got to preface all this by telling the story you've heard many times, and that is probably 10 years ago, I went up to play the National Golf Nights of America in the National Singles, and I saw firm and fast course, the likes of which I'd never even remotely seen before. And I looked at it, I had that what I call light green sheen, and I said, I'm not going to break 100 on this course. I'm just going to cover. It was more fun than I'd ever seen. At exit 7A, I've told this story many times, it hit me, oh my God. So I started calling all these superintendents. How often can you get your course firm and fast? And I talked to 47 of them, and they said, well, we can do it a week here and there, then we can pull it back. And the 47th guy was you. And I said, how often can you do that? And you said, what do you mean? How often can you do it? He said, it's that way all the time. And I said, well then, what's the difference between you and these 47 guys I just talked to? And you said, do you have a day to come over here and talk to me? So I did. And the additional things are much more interesting. I went over there and Nick Roden was there, who was the guy that got you into the philosophy, right? And I think Sully's father was there. And I asked you when I left, can I go talk to my superintendent about this? And you said, no, you can't. And I said, well, why not? He said, because if you can't bring a membership to this process, the superintendent's going to get fired, it's going to be a disaster. So that was a huge revolution.
Revelation.
Hoping for the revolution, Tom.
Would you edit the book?
I'll help you.
Oh, we all have to ask Tom Paul how the book editing is going, by the way, before the evening's out.
But you're right.
So that's my stock preface to you, and I think Ron's absolutely right. You know, we can do these architectural restorations and stuff like that, but if the maintenance practices aren't there, they're going to be nothing.
And I'll blow, toot your horn. There's no, and I play a lot of golf and a lot of golf tournaments and things. And every time I talk to my superintendent, unfortunately, he's sick and tired of hearing your name, but there's nobody better in our section that presents a golf course on a day-to-day basis than him. We, as players, as tournaments, Huntingdon Valley is, and Jim knows, they're fantastic at hosting events. And they relish it. They're very generous with their golf course. On a day-to-day basis, their golf course is the best around as far as fast, firm, and the way it's supposed to be. He's the best at it.
You can buy a copy. You can buy a copy of it.
He is. He's the best at it.
Not just that, but he did it all on his own.
I know.
Nobody, not even the USGA, would touch his
And
name.
they've educated the membership there, which is the biggest hurdle that there is. And they've done it there, and they've embraced it, and he's done the best job. As far
So
as
how about that for a leader?
Well, thank you very much for the compliments. A lot of people, and I didn't do this all myself. I have to compliment. Yeah, I have to compliment from the very beginning. You know, Link Roden with his insight into British golf and the maintenance meld, as you would call it, that he installed or insisted upon as an early green chairman in 1983. He had the foresight after I might have the dates wrong, but we had a drought in '82 that took out 80% of the grass when the superintendent abided by the drought restrictions in Pennsylvania, shut the water down, and it just collapsed. It was all POA. It was water, cut, spray, philosophy. And when I first started working there, I can remember playing it, and the ball just plugged in the middle of the summer. I said, you know, this is private country club stuff, you know. I came from a public course that was more fun than this, but it didn't register too much at that time. I was still young. But Link Roden had he took the initiative to research how can we avoid this ever happening again, and it will happen where the state restricts water. And he did a ton of research on British golf, and I guess probably had played in Europe, and had remembered prior to 1964 when Huntingdon Valley didn't have an irrigation system, how fun the golf course was, and the ball bounced everywhere, and the ground game was in play. And he came up through that, and then they put the irrigation system in 1964, and the playing conditions suffered due to the irrigation system. So I was young. I was hired as a superintendent in '83, and I was single. I had nothing to lose, and really, Link Roden took me under his wing and said, you know, here's where we want to go with this, and he worked with me almost every day, and he said, you know, we got to not water, we got to wean out the POA and have playing conditions the focus. And he developed what we call the quality standards and objectives back in '83, which you can find on GolfClubAtlas under the interview that was done back in 2005. Fascinating statement that just has been the backbone of the program since the early '80s. And we've been tweaking it ever since. I've since gotten into carbon-based programs, which most people refer to as organics, utilizing a lot of what they do in the organic world, trying to reduce the amount of pesticides and inputs. And it's just fascinating. The road I've gone down in the last 5 years in my world, it just keeps me on my toes, and I look forward every day to learning something more that I can do more with less. And our budget reflects that. If you ever look at our numbers and our cost per hole, what we do with a minimal amount of resources is pretty interesting. So, any questions? I'd rather answer questions.
Scott, if you were talking to a young superintendent today who was at a course that was really green, we were talking about this earlier, how would you describe the process of the educational process of getting the club to move in the correct direction? And I guess my process as general manager, my process now, we got them firm, we're moving towards organics, and it seems like even with the superintendent, I'm trying to, he seems to be reticent to it. It's like, you know, gosh, Adam, this is not, this is new, this is risky, da da da. How do you go about educating, how do you go about moving the club and the super in the process of moving them to dry and then to organic?
Well, I think the organic comes, if you shift to an organic program and don't shift the water management, that'll fail. And that's what has given organics a bad name. People shift to it or think they're shifting to it, but they keep the water going. So then you end up with what we call anaerobic microorganisms, that sulfur smell and that rotten, disgusting, bacteria, rotten smell. Anyways, so one of the keys to organics is respecting the fact that when you get into organics, you're feeding the soil, you're feeding the soil biology. The soil biology will work on thatch for you, free, will fix nitrogen out of the atmosphere, free, will aggregate soil, free, will give you better drainage for free, will give you better water holding capacity in the granules of soil that the microorganisms produce. Everybody has seen in the woods or in a garden a well composted garden, the crumbles of soil. What are they? Are they worm castings? In some case, yes. But most of the time, they're aggregations of soil particles that the microorganisms congregate or aggregate. So that can be destroyed with salt fertilizers, and that's what's going on. The land-grant colleges, everybody knows them, Cornell, Rutgers, Penn State, every state has a land-grant college. They all teach the same thing. They teach NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. All those macronutrients are impregnated on salt, rock salt. That's the carrier.